In over a dozen cases that have been ruled as suspicious drownings, a smiley face has been found near the body. The smiley face killer has been somewhat of a theory for a while, from 1997 all the way up to 2017. 45 bodies of college-age males have been found in 11 states, all in bodies of water. And many of these cases are strikingly similar. While police have just ruled this off as an accidental drowning, New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, both extremely credible sources with about 40 years of combined experience, have been working hard to solve these unsolved cases. They believe for many reasons that police have ignored obvious signs that we have a serial killer or a group of serial killers on our hands, and that they could be potentially responsible for up to 335 cases. All of the victims have been male, college-age, athletic, popular, and high on academic achievements, so they suspect that these murders may be out of jealousy. Almost all of the bodies found show signs of dying on land, and come back positive for a roofie drug. So why were these ruled as an accident? Let's look at the cases. Part 2 to the smiley face killer. So first, let's talk about the case of Patrick McNeil. On February 16th of 1997, Patrick was last seen with his friends at a bar called the Dapper Dog. This is located in Manhattan's Upper East Side. After throwing up in the bathroom, he told his friends he was leaving and would be taking the subway back. And after that, no one saw Patrick again, and his body was recovered floating next to the Brooklyn Pier in the East River, 50 days later and 12 miles from where he was last seen. After looking at CCTV footage, he can be seen stumbling down the street and last seen turning left onto 90th Street. However, it doesn't seem like he's alone. A van actually follows pretty closely behind him, and when he stops to throw up, they stop too. After a witness got a partial view of the plate, police still refused to look for it because they thought it would be too expensive, and just dismissed it as an accidental drowning, even though his autopsy death was classified as undetermined. His blood alcohol level did not seem consistent with the state that he was in. That's when Detective Gannon promised Patrick's parents that he would find their son's killer or killers. Part 3 to the smiley face killer. So why didn't Detective Gannon think that Patrick had drowned? Well, police ruled it this way because of an overconsumption of alcohol. However, his blood level of alcohol was not extremely high, which would not have been consistent with him throwing up. He was recovered on his back, which is unusual for a drowning. Blood lividity is the process in which the person's blood will stop moving after the person is deceased. For example, if you die on your side, your blood will pool to the side. And even though he was found on his back, the blood lividity was absent from his back, which is where it would be if he had died in that position. He had thermal injuries on both his hands and torso as if he had been burned, and strangulation markings on his neck. The most telling thing, though, is that his feet and hands did not present any skin slippage, which would have been consistent with having been submerged for 50 days. Nor was he bloated, which is found in a lot of drowning cases. In fact, the signs on his body would have been consistent with him being in the water for only 24 hours. Gannon's theory? He was stalked, abducted, held for an extended period of time, murdered, and then disposed of in the Part 4 to the smiley face killer. So now let's talk about the case of William Hurley. In October of 2009, he called his fiancée to come pick him up from a sporting event, letting her know that he was feeling really tired and that his phone was about to die, but gave her his location just in case. She came, and he was nowhere to be found. His body was found 6 days later in the Charles River in Boston, Massachusetts. This man was a Navy veteran. Similarly to Patrick, surveillance footage showed him stumbling. But again, when examining his body, his blood alcohol level was very low. So they decided to test for a roofie, and he came back positive with GHB, which would have explained the stumbling for both of them with such a low alcohol level. Not only this, but his phone was smashed nearby him. He had blunt force trauma to the head and eye socket and behind his left leg. But again, police said he must have slipped, hit his head, and accidentally drowned. It's so suspicious to me that the police are just writing it off as an accident, even though this man was literally in the Navy and able to communicate his location. And the case that comes after this is somehow more mysterious.
There's no way home, and I have no mercy. There's no way up, so I'm going down. Still I keep on living, so you pull me closer.
Part 5 to the smiley face killer. So the next case that we're going to talk about is Dakota James, who was literally a swim team captain. On January 5th of just 2017, he goes out to a bar with some coworkers, leaves to go home, and then is never seen again. 40 days later, his body is found in the Ohio River near Neville Island. On CCTV, he wasn't stumbling at all, just looking at his phone, and then walks towards an alleyway. 10 miles from this area is where his body's found. However, to have gotten there on its own, it would have had to travel through a dam, but his body didn't have a single scratch or bruise on it, which would have been consistent for going through something like that. Not only this, but again, there was roofie in his system, and Gannon even said it looked like there was strangulation marks on his neck. According to the autopsy, there was not enough water in his lungs to prove that he had drowned. And even though he had been missing for 40 days, his body only had 3 days of decomposition. To add to the spookiness, 11 smiley faces were found spray painted close to the bridge where his body was found. And again, shockingly, this was ruled as an accidental. Part 6 to the smiley face killer. So there are so many cases that have been theorized to be victims of the smiley face killer. Another was Todd Gieb, who went missing in July of 2005 and was found in Lake Michigan 21 days later. He was found vertical in the water like it looked like he was standing, and his body only showed 2.5 days of decomposition. In 2006, Christopher Jenkins is another case found in the Mississippi River. Tommy Booth is another. Lucas Holman, Brian Welzian. The list goes on and on. And I could probably make 50 TikToks on this thing. So why haven't these been treated as a serial killer case? Well, there was a report that came out in 2010 debunking the theory and gave about 18 reasons why the smiley face killer doesn't exist. A huge reason being that drowning is the third most common cause of death in the US for mostly men. So I guess it does happen often. Also, a graffiti smiley face is pretty common. Whether the smiley face killer exists or not, these cases shouldn't have just been dismissed as accidental drownings. However, there is a first-hand story from someone who believes that they were a potential victim of the smiley face killer. 39 people were found dead in their bunk beds wearing matching tracksuits. They were found after an anonymous tip came into the sheriff's department in San Diego. March 26 of 1997, the police were tipped off that there was some suspicious activity going on in a nearby mansion. A group of people had moved in and all of the windows were boarded up. The police went to go do a house check and found 39 people dead. Not only did all their tracksuits match, but so did their black and white Nike shoes, and they all had matching armbands that stated Heaven's Gate Away Team. This was the death of the Heaven's Gate cult and was the largest group death to occur involving U.S. citizens since the Jonestown Massacre. The death of this cult ended up being widely broadcasted everywhere, with the leader Marshall Applewhite even getting a cover on Time magazine. Very eerily, on YouTube you can look at a lot of Marshall's videos. I'll put in a clip of it now. This really leaves us with the question of how did this cult come about? And why did they make the decision to collectively take their own lives? So how did the Heaven's Gate cult start? Well, it began in the 1970s under the leadership of Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. Marshall first was in the U.S. Army and then after was a music professor at the University of Alabama. After, he went to Houston to go teach music and was on the board at the University of Thomas, but was fired for having a relationship with a male student. After his dad died, he was sent into a depression and was hospitalized at a psychiatric hospital. And there he met his nurse, Bonnie. And the second that Bonnie met him, she felt like the stars aligned. Even though she was married, she had been told by psychics frequently that she was going to meet a mysterious man, who was tall with light hair and a fair complexion. And she felt like Marshall resembled this man. She worked out their little astrological charts together. A lot of their beliefs aligned as well, which included a mix of Christianity along with UFOs and aliens. So she figured that you couldn't argue with the stars. And she up and left her kids with her husband and went on a road trip with Marshall after he got out of the psychiatric hospital. And they went across the US for 6 months sharing their beliefs. They started in Oregon and began their cult together. Part 3 on Heaven's Gate. So their first presentation happened in 1975 in Oregon. They handed out flyers that very much had Christianity mixed with sci-fi, mixed with conspiracy theory. And they had to even preface on the flyers that this wasn't a discussion about UFO sightings. But it did say that their presentation was 2 individuals who were sent from a level above human and will return to the level in spaceship UFO within the next few months. They were selling the premise that if you came with them on their road trip, they would be elevated to a new world and a better life called Tela. I'm pretty sure they were called human individual metamorphosis at the time. The 70s was really big on unconventional ideas, so lots of people would show up, but only a few people actually joined them. But the people that they did convince literally left their lives, their homes, their families to travel with them for over 2 decades. To join, they would have to go through a cleanse, which is drinking nothing but lemonade, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup for 3 months. They would give over their life savings so that they could travel from place to place, and were basically told that they would be visited by aliens who would give them their new bodies, and they could collectively ascend to a spaceship. But this is 4 on Heaven's Gate. So a lot of the appeal with joining them came with the roots of Christianity. The Christian teaching spoke to a lot of the people's childhoods and upbringing, and that the science fiction of it all kind of made it make more sense. For example, they would say Mary was impregnated by being taken up into a spacecraft. And I guess that made more sense than the original story. And if I'm being perfectly honest with you guys, with the alien documents that are coming out, I totally understand the appeal of this cult. They were reportedly extremely kind and charismatic, but then they started to kind of abuse their power. One night in Texas, they told them that a visitation was coming and that everyone in the cult needed to go outside and wait. So everyone went outside, stayed up all night. And then in the morning, Bonnie and Marshall were like, hey, there's no visitation. This was actually a test to see if everyone was faithful. And I think they started to abuse their powers. What was so different with them than any other cult is that they actually allowed visitations. They would let you leave if you wanted to. You could call your family on Mother's Day. And they basically just told their families that they were studying computers. But around the 1990s, the members went down to 26. And then Bonnie passed away. So Marshall knew he had to get more followers. 5 to the Heaven's Gate cult. So Bonnie's death honestly shook up the cult. She had cancer and was told that she couldn't live much longer, and she didn't really believe them and refused treatment, so she died in 1985. Marshall took it really hard, and the cult members kind of realized the inconsistencies. Like, wasn't she supposed to go up in a spacecraft, have a new body, something like that? So that's when Marshall backtracks and says, wait. Human bodies are just the vehicles for our souls, so we can essentially abandon them at any time. Bonnie left her body to return to her home among the telebeings, so she can help them. So instead of aliens helping us do this, we now have the ability to leave our body at any time. And in the 90s, the internet was fairly new. But let me tell you, Heaven's Gate was so on top of this, and they took over digital advertising. They spent 30 grand posting an ad. They would make videos to go along with their website. They also created a web design firm called Higher Source, and they used the money from this to rent a mansion outside of San Diego. And in October of 1996, they recorded 2 video messages offering viewers the last chance to evacuate Earth before the comet Hale-Bopp. 6 to the Heaven's Gate cult. So Marshall's belief system kind of shifted a little bit again. He basically told them that unaliving yourself would be the method to reach the next level, and that everything human needs to be left behind, including the body, to ascend. And a lot of the cult members were very competitive when it came to pleasing Marshall, who believed that sexual desire was a very bad thing, so some of the members even opted for surgical castration. Well, a comet called Hale-Bopp is about to pass by Earth, and Marshall essentially tells his cult members that it's now or never. He believes that there's a spaceship behind this comet with Bonnie in it coming to get them, and that the government was suppressing this information from them. So in late March of 1997, the group isolated themselves and recorded their farewell videos that you can watch on YouTube still. And on March 22nd, they mixed sedatives with applesauce and washed it down with vodka. They then put bags over their heads to asphyxiate themselves and passed away. And they did this in shifts, which I can't even imagine how traumatizing that was, to literally put your friend's dead body in a bunk bed right before yours. And this is how the police found them. Follow my Instagram if you want more content, and let me know what you want me to talk about next. Why does the entirety of the Denver International Airport have barbed wire facing inwards? Almost like a prison, it's trying to keep something in. The Denver International Airport is home to so many conspiracy theories. I went there several times within my own traveling, and whether you believe the conspiracy theories or not, it is so hard to argue that the entire airport is not suspicious. DIA was built as a replacement to the Stapleton Airport, even though nothing was wrong with the airport before. It was supposed to be done in 1993, but it didn't end until 1995, the final budget being $4.8 billion. And if you guys don't know this, that exceeds normal airport price. And to put it into even more perspective, this airport and its grounds are bigger than Manhattan. So what was the purpose of making it so big and expensive? The builders for the DIA worked under multiple contractors, so it's rumored that no one knows the true scope of this project. But maybe the architects wanted it this way. It's filled with strange markings, underground tunnels, and apocalyptic themes. So the first thing that I'm going to be starting with is Blucifer. I feel like a lot of people already know about this demon-eyed horse that stands out in front. The reason that Blucifer got his name, his actual name is just Blue Mustang, was because he ended up killing his creator. As he was building, the head ended up falling off, hitting his leg, cutting into an artery. And to add to the creepiness, it has red glowing eyes whenever you look at it from a certain angle. So everyone in Colorado pretty much just refers to it as Blucifer. Many people think that the red eyes are a nod to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but an artist said it's just to honor the wild spirit of the American West. Weird. Also in the front of the airport, there's a tile with a picture of a cart on it. In the cart, it says AUAG, like for silver and gold. But some people think that this is referring to a deadly strain of hepatitis called Australian antigen, which is believed to be a part of biological warfare. And while I originally thought that this was kind of far, the man who discovered Australian antigen was actually a part of the team that founded the airport. And there's more that stays on this apocalyptic theme. Welcome to the next part of Denver International Airport. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Great Hall. In there is a plaque with the dedication for the airport on there. And they dedicated it to the New World Airport Commission, which is an organization that doesn't even exist or has ever existed. So why would this even be a dedication? Under this capstone, there is a time capsule. This is set to be open in 2094, but no one knows what's inside of it. There are symbols and markings in this said to be dedicated to the Freemasons, which carry their own separate theories about being linked to the Illuminati. A lot of people also say that from an aerial view, the airport looks like a swastika, but honestly, I don't really think it's noticeable unless you're really, really looking for it. And the other things is the creepy murals. These were designed by Leo Tanguma. One is called World Dream of Peace, and the other is in peace and harmony with nature. However, they're depicting themes of death and again, apocalyptic times. I'm pretty sure a soldier stabbing a dove means the exact opposite of peace. And there's literally children in caskets, but don't worry, it doesn't stop there. Welcome back to Denver International Airport. So the next thing we're gonna do is talk about the tunnels. There are 6 underground layers and possibly more. And it's thought that the tunnels that exist underneath go all the way from Colorado Springs Air Force Base to the Air Force Base on Cheyenne Mountain. There's theorized to be bunkers down here, and that it's potentially made as a safe place for the world's elite during the apocalypse. A huge part of this theory lies with author Alex Christopher. She met some people at a conference in Denver who were able to take her down to the tunnels. She took her friend Phil Schneider with her. And down there, they were able to get pictures. I'll insert them here. But not long after this, Schneider apparently unalived himself, which again, after coming out with this information, is extremely suspicious. Also, there was 5 buildings that were originally built for the airport but didn't quite work out. So instead of destroying these buildings, they just buried them and then continued to build on top of them. Even the constructor was very confused on why he was requested to do this. So because of this, how do we know how many extra buildings or hangars there are? And what exactly are the specific conspiracy theories surrounding this apocalyptic themed airport? So what exactly are people theorizing involving the Denver International Airport? Well, the 2 huge ones is that it's either connected to the Illuminati or to the apocalypse, and may even potentially be the Illuminati headquarters. So the Freemasons have so many conspiracy theories surrounding them about them being linked to the Illuminati. And there's several Freemason markings around this airport. The airport is also just so expensive, and maybe they got their funding from the Illuminati. The exchange may have been money for headquarters. And the tunnels make it very, very easy to move in and out. And if you're a secret society running the nation, why wouldn't you be located at an airport? The other theory, like I stated before, is that this is for the apocalypse, to keep the elite inside. Just because of how the tunnels are set up in the rumored bunkers, and with all of the hints being around the airport, and the Australian antigen, it's giving us very much apocalyptic New World Order vibes. But also the barbed wire facing in is very concentration camp-like. Either way, this airport has fully embraced these conspiracy theories. They have an animatronic gargoyle that sits out in front and talks to you about them, which making a joke about it would be the easiest way to cover. One of the most terrifying cults that I have learned about recently refers to themselves as the Children. And the reason that they terrify me so much is because they are related to so many other cults. Well, Scientology came about in 1953. And 2 members from this church, Robert D. Grimson and Marianne McLean, decided to leave it and start the cult of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. And they brought their satanic teachings to the US around the 1970s. Well, if you guys watched my previous video about the Son of Sam killings, which occurred in New York City around the 1970s, you might be able to connect these 2 things together. Well, the issue with this case is that one man was convicted. But it seems as though police really fudged this up. There was so much attention around this case that they were just looking to just put someone behind bars instead of actually doing full investigations. Well, one editor named Maury Terry ended up taking investigating into his own hands. And not only was he able to find a substantial amount of evidence and cryptic messages, but he was also able to find where the cult would meet up for their rituals. Part 2 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. Well, it was rumored that there was a cult working in New York City that was an offshoot of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. They referred to themselves as the Children and ended up in Yonkers. Well, when Maury was doing his investigating, he was let know by several people that their rituals were done in Untermeyer Park, an estate that used to be absolutely beautiful. But as you can see from the pictures, there's now an abandoned pump house. And when investigating this, trigger warning, they found blood on the walls and blood on the ceiling, and symbolic writing. Not only this, but dead animals were everywhere, including specifically dogs. So then it was time to look back at David's letters, in which he made cultural references to Beelzebub, which is the demon known as Lord of the Flies, and Brat, which is a small devil. He also ended his letter as From the Gutters, which was quite literally the nickname for the abandoned pump house. And when holding how he signed his name at the end of the letters to the mirror, you can find the words Sam and Carr and Burke in it. So where were the actual sons of Sam, and why hadn't they been questioned? Part 3 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. Well, after Maury had taken an investigation into his own hand and was seeing all these connections, he went to the police with it. And he was essentially just told to shut it down. That they had their man behind bars, there's no way other people worked with him, even though there was clear indications that he was working with a cult, and none of the eyewitness sketches even looked like him. So the last thing to do would be able to tie the sons of Sam to the actual case. So John, Michael, and Wheat Carr were all the kids of Sam, Michael and John specifically being the sons. After talking to neighbors, there were several stories about Sam beating them. Their father Sam struggled with alcoholism, and this was all included in the letter that David wrote. So Maury's like, okay, let's go do investigating in the place that they were from, Minot, North Dakota. And when they got to their hometown, they were told by everyone that they were legitimately cult leaders. There was accounts of them sacrificing dogs, drinking blood, all of the works. So Maury was like, okay, we need to actually get a hold of these guys. Maybe they'll be open to talking about it. But soon after that, it was reported that they both mysteriously... Part 4 to why I don't think the Son of Sam worked alone. So how did the other suspects mysteriously die, you might be asking? Well, one randomly unalived himself, while the other died in a mysterious car crash. which is entirely suspicious. So after adding all of this evidence together, they were able to release it to the public. And it made sense that Berkowitz would have had other people watching, other people holding the gun, other people doing the killings, all orchestrated by a cult leader. But because their main suspects for this case were now dead, there wasn't really much that they could do. Maury was trying to prevent this from happening again, though. Like, what if the children decide to send another member of theirs out? Either way, their parent cult, the Process Church of the Final Judgment, was neighbors to Charles Manson, and is where he got many of his own foundational ideas for his cult. So it's so clear that these connections run deep. Let me know what you guys think of this case. Let me know if there's anything in this that you want me to talk about next, like Scientology or Charles Manson, or if you want to hear more about the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Either way, follow my Instagram for more content. Put a finger down if the guy that cheated on you ended up getting the other girl pregnant. God, I hope this is not something that we can relate on. Well, to provide a little bit of backstory, I met this guy that we'll call Logan at a bar. And while that should have maybe been a red flag, homegirl really thought she met her Prince Charming. He swept me off my feet, we exchanged numbers, and eventually decided to give us a chance. And let me tell you, the first year was a fairy tale. For months, we talked about having a baby. And eventually I ended up getting a positive pregnancy test back. So I was scared, but excited to give this to him. And when I handed it to him, honey, he just went silent. I asked him how he felt, and his response was, like I need to pee. Later on, I begged this man to propose to me because we're having a baby together, and he proposed to me with the cheapest turn your finger green ring. And I know these are fat red flags, but at the time, I just saw them as pink because I was giving birth to our son. Well, the second it was time to give birth to him, my fiance wasn't involved at all, to the point where the nurses were asking if the dad was in the picture. I was straight up alone. But now pay attention. One female friend that went on double dates with us often, named Tori, came up with my husband to check part 2 to my ex cheating on me and getting the other girl pregnant. So a little backstory on this girl, Tori. I knew her because we had gone on double dates with her and her husband before. I'd been to her house multiple times. She was also pregnant, and I was super, super excited for her. Logan always encouraged a relationship between us. Because we could both relate on being pregnant, we talked almost every single day until the end of my pregnancy. Logan and Tori talked every day, multiple times a day. But again, I just saw this as a pink flag. He would go visit her during lunch breaks all the time, but because she was married, I really didn't think it was a big deal. And I trusted Logan, right? So anyways, he ended up bringing her to the room, where she held my brand new baby in her arms and met my parents. I was also touching her baby bump and was super excited for her. Well, when it was time for her to leave, Logan walked her out. And they were gone for about an hour. But still, I didn't think anything of it. However, a few months later, I ended up getting a Facebook friend request from Tori's husband. However, I don't really check my Facebook very often, so it took me weeks to realize that he had requested me and sent me a message. And it said, let me know if you want to know how badly your fiance is cheating on you, with part 3 to my boyfriend cheating on me and getting the other girl pregnant. So after Tori's husband sent me this message, I still couldn't believe it. I thought it was just a joke until I looked at Logan and said, hey, Tori's husband texted me. As soon as I said that, his face dropped and he stopped talking, which solidified my fear, and my husband admitted to everything. I dropped my phone and just cried. Like, how many times had he left to go help her while I stayed at home pregnant? The amount of times he went to go visit her at lunch? And he even admitted that the baby that Tori was pregnant with was his. I ended up finding out that their relationship had been going on for 3 years, which was before she was even married to her husband and before Logan and I got together. And when we broke up, he ended up proposing to Tori with a much nicer ring. But ultimately, when she had the baby, he just abandoned that baby too. And to this day, he has not seen that baby and still refuses to see my son. I even tried to suggest a healthy co-parenting relationship between the 4 of us, and he couldn't even seem to do that. Tori and her husband ended up getting back together, and she's tried to reach out multiple times to apologize, but it just really doesn't make up for what she did. Okay, so can we please talk about how McDonald's is responsible for one of the biggest conspiracies? Yes, McDonald's. It became a massive FBI investigation and involved one of the biggest Italian mob families in New York. Well, around 1987, there was a little bit of a decline in the fast food industry, and McDonald's was really feeling it, so they were like, oh my gosh, how can we improve our sales? And this is when they decided to partner with Simon Marketing. And they had some amazing business ideas. They helped them come up with the Happy Meal, and they helped them come out with the Monopoly game. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I used to play it a lot as a kid. You would get this little sticker that you could peel off on the back of drinks boxes. It would offer you a free Big Mac, a drink upgrade, but some of them offered way bigger prizes, like jet skis, cars, all the way up to $1 million. Yeah, I never found one of those, but you could always bring it back and add it to your Monopoly board. And anyone could participate even if you didn't buy anything from them. Like, you could just go in and ask for a chip, or else it would have been considered gambling. McDonald's sales jumped 40%, so they were making bank. But it didn't take long for someone to tip off the FBI. Part 2 on the McDonald's conspiracy. So the thing about their Monopoly game is that it was a 1 in 250 million chance of winning. That is less than the lottery. But one day, the FBI was tipped off that the past 3 winners were from the same family. Like, that's actually impossible. And the name that was dropped for who was controlling all of this was Uncle Jerry. Obviously, this is a massive accusation to make. So the FBI was like, okay, let's look into this. And what do you know? All of the recent winners were from the Jacksonville area. So they were like, okay, is it someone at Mickey D's? Makes the boxes, delivers it. Either way, they had to call an immediate meeting with the McDonald's company. They didn't tell them why. They were just like, hey, you guys need to come down here. I would have been scared out of my mind if the FBI didn't tell me why they needed me. But the second the employees got there and sat down, they presented them with the case. And they were shocked. They were like, that is absolutely not possible. It's so rare to win this game, they should not be coming from the same area. And it was causing a major freak out. But luckily, the timing was perfect because they were about to release their next Monopoly game. And this way, they could catch someone in the act. Part 3 on the McDonald's conspiracy. So what exactly is a conspiracy? It's a secret plan made by a group to do something harmful or unlawful. And it didn't take long for this next Monopoly game to have a new winner. His name was Michael Hoover. The FBI decided to make a fake production company to act like they were doing a big commercial for him winning when they were actually secretly interrogating him. So they were asking him questions. He went into detail on how he found the chip, how he was gonna buy a boat and name it Ruthless Scandal. And then the FBI, being one step ahead, had already tapped him. So when he left, they heard his phone call, in which he basically laughed and said that he pulled it off, that they actually think he's gonna buy a boat called Ruthless Scandal. But they hear the name Uncle Jerry talked about again. So they had to do a deeper dive into who was working for them. And well, the company they partnered with, Simon Marketing, there was a guy who was head of security named Jerome Jacobson. He oversaw the whole process. Not only did he head all of security, but he also designed it as well. On top of this, he was responsible for taking the chip to the McDonald's location. But if the process was so thorough, how was he pulling it off? Part 4 to the McDonald's conspiracy. So what exactly made them suspicious of Jerome Jacobson? Well, the people that were getting the chips were all around where he lived. Like his nephew, his butcher, which, like, how can you be that stupid? You need to actually be spreading these out. But essentially what he was doing when he was on his way to those McDonald's locations was stopping at the airport bathroom, breaking the seal, taking the piece out and resealing it and leaving the bathroom. So he walked out with the prize piece and he was selling them off. For example, he sold one worth $200,000 or $45,000 to his nephew. Obviously, he realized it was looking a little sketchy, so he decided to get someone else involved, named Jerry Colombo. I know it's a little confusing because they're both Jerry. He belonged in one of the 5 crime families that dominated New York. He wanted to promise his daughter a chip. And if you didn't know this, that's why Jerome Jacobson was being called Uncle Jerry. I guess uncle is a term of respect in the mafia. And together they all teamed up to pick other winners, like Gloria Brown, who paid $40 grand for a $1 million chip. And even Jerry Colombo himself got a Dodge Viper. With all this info, the FBI was about to make their arrest. To the McDonald's conspiracy. The last place that Jerry sent it to before he was caught was St. Jude's Children's Hospital. I guess he decided to do something positive with his chips, but they did use that to track him down. And yes, McDonald's did let the Children's Hospital keep the $1 million chip. But Uncle Jerry was being followed by about 25 FBI agents and was officially caught. Him and 8 others were arrested, and 5 were indicted for collecting false prize. Jerome Jacobson had stolen up to 60 game pieces. He served 35 months in prison and had to pay $12.5 million in restitution. He's free though now and in his 70s. Jerry Colombo actually died in a car accident, so he was not arrested. And there's a lot of stuff around that being an inside job. It was a really sketchy car accident, and sometimes you just don't know with the mafia. Well, Simon Marketing and McDonald's sued each other back and forth, but Burger King responded by suing McDonald's for false advertising a promotion while knowing that the game was compromised. And they eventually just dropped the case. McDonald's started to give away a lot of cash prizes in response, and they officially stopped the game in 2016. Let me know what other conspiracies you want to hear about. Imagine resorting to murdering your spouse after only 8 days of marriage. Today, we're going to be talking about the murder of Cody Johnson. To give a little bit of backstory into his life, he was born on April 8th, 1998, was very outdoorsy, loved cars, got a career in making custom commercial cars, and his boss was his best friend. He had an awesome relationship with his family, with his friends, an amazing job that he loved, but all he really wanted was a wife to go along with it. Well, in Halloween of 2000, 2011, he met Jordan Graham. She was a huge Christian, very active in the church, but she was also very shy and reserved. But this attracted Cody to her. They were like yin and yang, perfect opposites. And Cody knew he was going to marry her after just a few weeks of knowing Jordan. He fell so hard, but a lot of their friends and family was noticing that Jordan wasn't falling quite as hard. And it's very important that I state that because of Jordan's religious views, celibacy was huge for her. So Jordan and Cody decided to buy a house and get married. It was very noticeable that Jordan was more excited about the wedding, though, than the marriage. And when it was time for the wedding, this is when things took a turn for the worse. Part 2 to the murder of Cody Johnson. Well, the day of the wedding hit, and they had a custom song made for their wedding. And it stated things like, "You're my safe place to fall, you help me to climb higher for a better view," and this is all a massive foreshadow. After their wedding, Cody took a week off of work as their honeymoon period to move into their new house. Well, the day before this honeymoon period was over was a Sunday, so they went to church, went to the lake, and went out to Dairy Queen with some friends. And this was the last time anyone heard from Cody. The next day occurred, and he didn't show up to work. His boss, who again was also his best friend, was extremely worried. So worried that he went to his house, and when he knocked on the door for a while and no one answered, he resorted to breaking in. He was panicked, looked for evidence around the house, and found Cody's phone in the garage. But there was no sign of Jordan. Absolutely panicked, he called the police. Because of how worried his boss was, the police took this very seriously. They were also wondering why his wife didn't make this report. Well, the wife ended up texting a friend asking if they had seen Cody, saying that he drove off with out-of-town friends and didn't know where he went. Part 3 to the murder of Cody Johnson. So at this point, friends and family know that Cody is missing. So they go to Cody and Jordan's house to help. And when they're over there, Jordan just seems upset instead of happy that people are actually helping. At one point, she gets so upset that she throws her wedding ring. Well, obviously with this behavior, the police call her in to question her. They're like, "Hey, was there a fight?" She says no. They're like, "Well, do you think you know where he went?" She's like, "Well, he does like to go out on very fast joyrides," almost suggesting that they were going too fast and maybe crashed somewhere. She also said that she didn't make a missing persons report in case he came back and was upset with her. Well, the cops were potentially thinking that this was a drug deal gone wrong, because that wasn't uncommon for the area. Search parties were looking for Cody everywhere until an email came in. I'll insert this email now from Cody the Car Man. And Jordan originally showed this email to her friend, and it was her friend who encouraged her to take this email to the cops instead of her just doing it herself. It stated that his body was in Glacier National Park, but when she took this to the police, she showed no emotion, but they still decided to search. To the murder of Cody Johnson. So whenever Jordan brought this email to them, she claimed that he did work with the Cody, and when they found this Cody and interviewed him, he said that he hadn't worked with him in a long time. He also was extremely cooperative, and they couldn't find any evidence against him. They also could not tie that email to him. So they take their search to Glacier National Park. Jordan brings her friend Hannah, and they walk around with a search party looking at different areas. But again, Jordan's very unemotional and not even helping. Her friend was just trying to be as supportive as possible. Well, they couldn't find him, so they went home, called it a day, and came back the next day. And Jordan brought her little brother with her. And as they're driving through, Hannah is suggesting places that the search party should go to. But Jordan ends up having another idea. She takes them on a very long road to the top where a parking lot is, and states that her and Cody went here a lot. This area was beautiful and scenic, but dangerous, and the rocks for the hikers were not approved. But everyone watched as Jordan jumped over the railing and onto the rocks, went to a specific edge of a small cliff, throws a rock over the edge, and states, "I think he's down there." Part 5 to the murder of Cody Johnson. So Jordan throws the rock over the edge and states, "OMG, it's him." Her little brother joins her and kind of looks over the edge, and it's just past the point that you can't see, but you can definitely see that something's down there, which traumatized her little brother, and he was so upset that he was physically crawling back to the car and crying. And again, Jordan was emotionless. and everyone was shocked by her behavior and the fact that she knew the right place to go. A member of the FBI had to actually climb down the tree by rope in order to confirm that there was a body down there before they even started the rescue mission, because of how dangerous the rescue mission would be. But once they were able to go there, they confirmed that it was him, he had his ID on him, and a helicopter had to come drop a 200-foot line to retrieve him. All of Cody's friends and family stated that he was afraid of heights, so he had to have been lured there. The police thought it was very suspicious that Jordan knew exactly where to go, and when questioned on this, she said the Holy Spirit just led her to this spot. Now they're super weirded out but still don't have evidence against her. And this is when her matron of honor ended up coming forward with text messages about Jordan being scared to get married. Part 6 to the murder of Cody Johnson. So the matron of honor ended up coming forward with all of these text messages, in which Jordan was saying that she was scared to get married and scared to lose her virginity. She was also crying the day of her wedding and stated that she would freak out if he even made a move on her. Well, I guess after they got married, she pretended like she was on her period. But obviously that lie can only last for so long, so she told her friend that she ended up telling Cody she didn't want to be with him anymore after 8 days of marriage, that they got into an argument and he left. So now the police know that she's telling different people different things. On top of that, they were able to trace the IP address of the email back to her stepdad's house. So that's when Jordan knew it was time to come clean. She said she told Cody she wasn't happy anymore and they got into a huge argument, but decided to cool off a little bit at the national park, in which they got into an altercation again and she pushed him off the cliff, which didn't surprise investigators at this point. Jordan then went to his funeral and was on her phone the entire time, and finally was arrested for 1st and 2nd degree murder, but was only convicted for 2nd degree and sentenced to 30 years, in which she didn't testify or apologize. Because of her Christian background, she made it seem like it was worse to just divorce.